Welcome to another episode of Young Entrepreneurs with the Green Roof Team. My name is Nelson Fernandez, and we're here today with Riggs Eckelberry. How are you doing today?
Nelson, I'm doing great, and it's really so great to be on your show. I love your mission and what you're trying to do there.
Thank you. Cool. So, Riggs, today, would you like to kick off our episode with telling the audience why you should listen to this episode and other episodes?
Thank you, Nelson. You know, water in the world and even in America is in deep trouble. And the reason is that we're not investing enough in water infrastructure. And the federal government is contributing less and less each year. And the infrastructure bill is not really helping. And so we have a failure of the whole big central systems. Now, in your home, you're still going to keep getting water, flush your toilet, etc., because otherwise a lot of people would get sick. But industry is being told to do their own treatment. And this is a major sea change in water. And we are here to help those private water treatment sites, commercial, agricultural, industrial, do their own water treatment. And we're bringing in investors to fund these activities. And we believe we can make a major change in how water is treated in America and hopefully the rest of the world.
That sounds wonderful, and I'm excited to learn more about water treatment. So before we dive into the technical details and more of a question basis, would you like to introduce yourself to the audience and myself, who you are, where you're from, and what you've done in the past and what some of your hobbies are?
Well, okay, so I actually was raised as the son of an international businessman, so I call no place home. I was born in Canada, I lived in the Caribbean and in Europe, etc., and followed that up with an early career in the nonprofit space where I sailed on ships all over the world. And when I finally settled down, and by then it was the early 80s, I was really fascinated by the prospect of technology. What can technology do to change conditions? Because you can pass laws saying that you must do this, this, and this, and this, but if the technology doesn't exist, it's not going to happen. So I got involved with the whole, internet, the early computing movement of the 80s and into the 90s. And I just fell in love with the rapid change that we could make happen. Fast forward to the early 2000s, and I was finally, considered bankable as a CEO. Like, okay, Riggs, you can be a CEO. But the people who wanted me to be a CEO wanted me for a totally different space, which was this brand new space called microalgae for biofuels. It was a fascinating space, and I got all kinds of excitement from the mainstream media. I was, Stuart Varney called me, "I'll call you Algae Man." It was an amazing time. Only problem was it relied on a very high cost of crude. Crude had to be at $120 a barrel in order to pay for the algae. And of course, the oil industry promptly dropped all the prices, went all the way down to $35. And overnight, I was looking at a no business plan, like where were we going? And so we managed to reinvent ourselves into the water industry. And that's where we are today. And the interesting thing about the water industry is I landed in it, and all of a sudden, I didn't have Stuart Varney interested in me. I was not Waterman. I was nothing. And it turns out that nobody really pays attention. Everybody thinks water is important, but they don't want to know about sewage and water treatment and those big concrete structures down by the river. Like, no. And so I realized that it was not if you don't have people's attention and care, then the funding doesn't happen, right? And sure enough, I discovered that there's very poor funding of water treatment and water purification. And this is why we have problems in Flint, South Bend, Fort Lauderdale, Compton, California. The list goes on and on. Why? Because the way we've treated water all along is broken. And it's just sitting there falling to pieces. What do we do about it? Well, unfortunately, the trillions are not available. I don't know where they're going. We're spending trillions, but they're not going to water. So we realized that what's happening is more and more of the actual purification of water is happening at the places where it is made dirty. which makes sense, right? I mean, why not clean it up? Clean up your mess where you are, right? Don't send it somewhere else. And sure enough, that's what's been happening. More and more businesses, farms, industry are doing their own water treatment. Only problem is the funding isn't there. Today, we are a leader in funding these systems so that, Nelson, let's say that you have a brewery and you're starting to expand and nobody will take your dirty water. We'll give you a wastewater treatment system and you'll just pay by the gallon. You don't have to pay a bunch of capital. And this is what it's normal in other spaces. It's called water as a service, but it's brand new in water. And that's what we're doing. And it's super exciting. And we think we're making a big difference now.
Awesome. Definitely, I know I'm curious on how water would get treated by industry. For the past 2-3 years now, I've been working for a liquefied natural gas company. So we try and do as much work as we can on site, especially when it comes into playing with the surrounding water areas. Like, for example, there's a swamp-like area nearby that was destroyed many years ago, but then the facility, we went in and put in the money to be able to revitalize it. And now we make sure it's maintained because we want to make sure that we keep the public happy. It's near beaches, but then also it's our more so like responsibility to make sure we keep the area better. So it's amazing work, and I'm excited to keep on hearing about it, especially how it affects the local areas. My cousin actually lives in Fort Lauderdale, and anytime I visit him, we never drink out the tap. We always have
exactly.
waters or jugs.
I know, it's pretty sad. But it sounds like you have a good situation where you are, but it's unfortunately not the rule. The rule is that there's, like Fort Lauderdale has these problems with sewer mains breaking and poop ending up on the lawns and all kinds of stories. And the water quality. So that you can invest in an oil well, right? And you get royalties. You can't do that with a water system. You can't invest in a water system. And we thought that was really strange, because if the water industry needs money, well, why don't we open it up to regular investors to invest in? And so that's what we did. It's something called water on demand. And basically, if a business wants a water system, they get it. They just start paying by the gallon, just like they did with the city. And then the investor gets a royalty, and people love investing in water much more than in oil. I mean, they think it's great, right? Because it's sustainable. So why not invest in a water well, quote unquote, right? That's a big program of ours, very, very popular. And we're raising money very quickly on that to specifically pay for these water as a service type projects.
So then once an industry or area, they use a water treatment system, does it stay within the utility company? So then are you sending the clean water back to the utility company?
Correct. The utilities are perfectly happy to get treated water back, so they just don't want the dirty water. And so they'll provide the clean water to the users. And we have projects to clean that water, because as you know, it's not always perfect. And then maybe recycle it internally and then resend it. You see, the only chance you have, if you think about, you talk about sustainability, you know that Israel recycles almost 90% of its water. The second in the world is Spain at 20%. The US, 1%. Now, the reason for it is a design reason. None of these, we have older water systems that were designed, Israel designed everything post-World War II, right? That's when they were created.
Quite recent compared to the Americas and Europe.
Right. It's kind of like the same way we're stuck with old phone lines, right? So here we have old water systems that only go one way. Like I used to live in LA, and if you flush your toilet in Beverly Hills, the water goes all the way down to the ocean, gets treated, and it goes in the ocean. It's clean, but it doesn't go back to Beverly Hills. It's over. But if you're in Beverly Hills and you treat it yourself, you can keep reusing it, right? And so that's where the recycling can occur, is at the point of use. So we think that it's a great way for users to clean the water coming in, reuse it 1 or 2 times, and then finally send it to the municipality clean, what they call treated, which is a particular level of clean. And that makes everybody happy. Now, the infrastructure doesn't have all that load. It's been unburdened, and the users have control. And by the way, water rates are inflating at a rate 3 times the rate of normal inflation. So as it is, it's a really bad situation that hopefully we can help, mitigate, but also return a good investment that's inflation friendly to the investor. So all in all, OriginClear is providing an inflation friendly way to invest in an asset, water, which is very beneficial, and increases sustainability through promoting recycling and control of the process by the user. And we think that's the future, not just in America, but in North America and the world eventually.
And thinking about the 3 pillars of sustainability, you are tackling the finance side, the people side, connecting with users, and then also the environmental of having clean water. It's amazing.
We love it. It was hard at first because we couldn't figure out how to change conditions in the water industry. Like, what? It's not movable. It's resistant to change, right? And we found that where the need really was these stranded users who were stuck with a problem, and they didn't have the finance, $1 million floating around for a water system. They're making beer, or they're making whatever, or they're managing a group of homes. They just want to get on with it. And so we help people just solve their water problems. And we're not just going to build it with our own company. We have a good company in Texas that builds these systems. We're spreading it out, and we will let any water company that has a client work with us to get this thing financed. And thus we want to spread water on demand as a concept and really make change happen. And if that happens and we can really make, societal change happen, then all this time of learning things along the way and spending time in the .com and being a ship captain and all that will have been worth it for me, for sure.
Amazing. So touching upon more the financial side of water on demand.
Yes.
How does your company be able to generate revenue, not having that large initial cost for the user? Does it take longer to receive the payback?
Well, I'll give you a good example. Used to be you bought Microsoft Office for like $130 one time, boom. Now you pay for it like $19 a month. And if you do the math, you're paying more, right? Over time, but you're getting a better product. You've got the OneDrive, the cloud, you've got real-time everything. Microsoft Office it's a live managed product, right? And so you don't mind spending that money because, you're doing all kinds of cool things in there, and all of a sudden some feature shows up, boop, and that is what we're trying to bring to water. In other words, moving from here's your water system, have fun, goodbye, to here's a service. We're going to take care of your water, and you won't have to worry. You don't have experts. We'll just make sure it runs and make sure through remote management that the proper treatment's done. And you just pay us, X amount per gallon on a long-term contract, and everybody's happy. Your problem goes away. We own that machine. So the investor's happy because he still owns the machine that's sitting at that location. So that it's an asset investment, and it returns good money. I was interviewing the guy who did a lot of work to implement what's called Toyota Mobility, which is transportation as a service. And he's saying that if you turn cars into a service, your margins improve by 30 to 40%, right? As opposed to just selling a car and throwing it out the door. So you have a lot of lost revenue if you just sell machines or products. The smart people are the ones that make it a continuing recurring revenue, right?
So it's more of a subscription purchase where you have continual maintenance available and services than just a one-time, here you go.
Fully outsourced. We take care of the problem, and it's in your operating budget. You don't see it. It's fine. It's no problem. So it's easy to digest for the end user. A major problem goes away. I was talking to a brewery owner, and literally while I was talking to him, this guy shows up, and who are you? Oh, I'm the guy. Your chiller showed an alert on our network, and I've come to fix it. The brewer didn't even know it was broken, and the guy shows up to fix it. That's called a service. So all his chillers were being handled by the firm under contract, and he didn't have to worry about it. It's like, no, you know what? That's fine. They got it. This really allows you to focus on your core business. And I think at the end of the day, the more you can do that and delegate all the things that are not core focus, the better you'll do. And the one thing, of course, is those people better not fail. So you have to choose your vendors. But if they're good vendors and they have good systems and processes in place, then just get on with it. Do your job and let the rest of the world take care of theirs.
Awesome. So do you have any lessons or experiences before that helped get you to this point in your career and in your life and be able to have that perspective of providing service continually?
It's really interesting because in the 80s, I was in New York City, and this was when I first got into the free market, because before that, as I told you, I was in nonprofits, or I was in Hollywood, actually, which was the same thing. There's not very logical world in Hollywood. But I landed in New York, and I started a computer company, and I worked very hard. And after a few years, I became very discouraged because I was changing companies from paper systems to computerized accounting. And I was hardly making any money. I was like, this is so hard, so ridiculous. And I ended up giving away the business to my best salesman, and he's become a millionaire ever since. Because what was all the money? The money was in the long-term relationship with all those customers, right? Because they needed to have, and sure enough, when you have an outsourced IT firm, you pay them a monthly fee per employee, and whatever they need is taken care of, right? Antivirus, burn in a new machine, whatever. And it's a real cash cow for the IT firm. And for you, you don't have the worry. You can say, hey, fix this problem, right? So it's a win-win for everybody. And that was the hidden revenue that I didn't realize was there because it was so early on. By the time I moved on and started actually become a marketer, eventually I became a marketer in the internet. But as a service provider, I didn't realize the power of the recurring revenue. And it was a tough lesson to learn. It was really tough. You have a big failure like that. You're like, you lick your wounds for a while, right? But it really taught me that a relationship is so hard to create that you don't want to lose it, right? Let's say, Nelson, that I sell you something and then I go away. Well, wait a minute. It took all this work to get to know you, and you get to know me, and this and that and the other thing. Well, why not just continue it? And that way you build this ongoing relationship, hopefully good for you, good for me. But, it's kind of like the value of a marriage. Do you want to have a one night stand or do you want a marriage? Well, marriages are much more productive because you can get things done together, right? Same thing, really.
Awesome. That's a great comparison too. So during your time and you mentioning learning from your lessons, one concept that I was reading about you is called mistake-based marketing. And can you just talk a bit about what that means? What is the fundamentals of that concept and how you can use that to grow?
It's a really interesting thing. Thanks for noticing that. Okay, so in the 90s, we had a lot of money because it was the dot-com boom. And so I would do these surveys. I would have, phone surveys done to determine, the need for a product and its positioning and some of its branding and so forth. Year 2000 came along, and all of a sudden I had no budget to survey, nothing. I can't find out how to launch a product, how to position it, how to brand it, how to this. No, you can't. There's no money. So I said, you know what? I'm just going to do these trial rollouts and send it out there and see what happens, right? So you do a little sample launch. That's what I call mistake-based marketing. You try it out, oh, okay, tweak it, send it out, tweak it, send it out, tweak it. And you're basically using the marketplace as a rapid fire testing environment. Don't spend too much money, obviously, because you're learning, but it allows you to sort of get the same result as a survey, but you're doing it in real time. And it's a lot like Facebook marketing is a lot like that. You throw out a ad, and then that didn't work too well. You sort of fiddle with it. It's not worth surveying the Facebook prospects. You just do an ad and then try to fix it, right? And I think that's really more and more the way to do it, because we have such real-time tools these days. The old days, when you rolled out a product, it took months and years. I remember the Gillette multi-blade product. It took them 4 years to develop it. A razor blade, right? Well, they tested it and this and that and that. Today, we don't have that luxury of that time. We're like, get it done. So in real time. So I think mistake-based marketing, you go, look, don't be afraid to fail, but make it a controlled experiment and learn quickly and learn again, and you'll get there. And this is how we got to water on demand in early 2020 when COVID hit. We were like, oh my gosh, all the investors are freaked out. This is the week of my birthday, early February 2020. And all of a sudden, like, all the investors, because that was when the price of oil crashed. And we realized we had a problem and that we couldn't sort of do what we were doing, which is mainly selling technology. And we went into this intense process that took basically 2 years. And it took us all the way to today, where we were constantly figuring things out, trying them out. And finally, we started in September of last year, we started raising the money, the capital for this fund. We'd done a lot of work, but every single step of it was tested in real time. So we didn't have to go back and go, you know what, that was terrible, right? Imagine, for example, I mean, I've been at sea and you take a wrong course. And the longer you go off course, of course, the longer it's going to take to come back. What if you correct on the way? Click, 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 click. If you have a good feedback loop, you can go, oh, I'm off course, fix it, off course, fix it, off course, fix it, as opposed to do this big, long. And that a lot of people make that mistake of persisting in a negative or non-productive path for too long. And they're afraid of being wrong, and they don't, what would people think? And what if I fail? Well, you know what? Get over it, because you'll fail anyway that way. So just accept that the micro failures are actually productive versus big ones.
Definitely, I agree. I know in any project that we go about, or I go on my own, I'm always looking for feedback, asking everyone, oh, is this working? Is this not working? If it's not, how can we go about improving it? And I learned that mainly through a leadership program I was in my university, but then also the design thinking model through Stanford University, which I've immersed myself into, being able to go in, rapidly prototype, and then go through the entire feedback loop, seeing what works, what doesn't work. And that sounds quite similar to your mistake-based marketing.
You're right, because manufacturing is accustomed to this and the product development process, but it was not so much in marketing. Marketing was not quite there at the time that I really had to figure this out. And I think today we take it for granted. Absolutely.
Cool. So thinking about a company as a whole, and I'm sure you have your areas that you're specialized in, how do you go about ensuring that the areas of the company that you're not well versed in is successful?
Bill Gates once said, try to hire people who are smarter than you. And that is the case, obviously smarter in their specialty, right? So I have a COO who is much smarter than me in operations, and I have a CFO who is much smarter than me in finance, and so forth and so on. So we started doing well when I started getting good people around me who I didn't have to tell them what to do. They're like, okay, hey, Riggs, I just figured this whole thing out. We're this. I'm like, great, carry on, right? So where I find I have to push people, push. Did you do this? Did you do this? When are you going to do this? How's you going to do this? These are not the people you want at the high level. Now, I'm not saying that everybody's perfect, that you don't have people who are not self-starters. It is what it is, but they can be programmed. But at the highest level, you better have a bunch of self-starters in their category. So to me, a team is the number one thing. There's nothing more important. And if I'd had a better team earlier on, then I would have gotten there earlier. You can't regret it, because you get the people when you get them, right. You it comes a moment when you are the right company for a particular person to come. It's almost a synchronicity concept, right? 2018, we were like running out of conventional financing options. And then this amazing guy, Ken Berenger, showed up, who's now executive vice president and my co-strategist on Water on Demand. And somehow magically he became available, and it's been amazing ever since. This is true of our chief strategic officer and president, Andrea D'Agostini. Same thing. We hired him just a couple of months ago, and he magically became available. So I think that you sort of progress your own organization to a point where it's the right fit for or the right person to come in. So maybe you can't force it. Maybe you just, keep building until sort of the things come together. And I think if you're very lucky, you end up with a very good team, and then you have a life. If you don't, then you end up being harried and exhausted and out of money. So get a good team. That's super important.
Definitely, I agree. I know the team I'm with right now, in the beginning, it was a bit tough because we didn't understand the scope. We were kind of all over the place, scattered, especially myself, didn't have much of a life. But then after seeing where everyone was, what their aligned are, what their values are, what their goals were, most importantly, then I began making a more of a matrix and seeing the connections of, oh, this individual has strong traits in this area. They might be a good fit to take more of a lead. And it worked out. And several months later, we actually had the wind turbine up here installed. And going back to
nice work.
Thank you. It was an amazing time being able to install it, being able to make all the compromises with facilities engineers to get it installed. But leading back to building a team, one mentor I had in the past, he always preached about you always build the team before tackling a project. And that holds true for everything you just said. Having the right people, having the right team just makes life a whole lot easier. You can help distribute out the work, have it all be uniform.
It's the difference between success and failure, I do think. Truly great companies are a conspiracy of really top people at the top, I believe.
So with the right people and pivoting your own company, how did you see changes in, say, the mission of the company and direction you were going once you did pivot?
Well, this company, Nelson, was built in the public markets. It's kind of how we got ourselves funded. But during the 14 years we've been in business, the over-the-counter market, the penny stock market has really gone down the drain because there's been a lot of abuses. A lot of people have taken people for a ride. And so it really, the company these days needs to be on the NASDAQ to raise money at decent terms and so forth. So we've made that our big goal now is get on the NASDAQ. There's certain requirements, and we have a roadmap to get to them. And I think that is the most critical thing we could do is to be a NASDAQ company and really define this new water as a managed service concept for the marketplace and be a market leader, sort of be the Amazon of water. And that to me is we got to do it. We got to move up to that level. We have a superb investor base, great team. We got the right business model, good technologies. At this point, it's just work night and day, and we'll get there, right?
So I heard a lot of different factors from the finance side and the technology and the people. What are some ways that your company moves forward to be able to invite new investors, new clients in?
The number one thing that this company needs now is to really popularize the concept of, we had such a hard time getting people interested in, sewage, et cetera. But I think now it's moving more like, it's an attractive concept of water like an oil well and the investability and so forth, and making it a cool new thing for investors to do. That now we just need to get a lot of visibility for it. Just get a lot of, and we don't care if they're going to invest. We just want people to like the concept and be interested. and that will build its own, virality in a way, right? Because people use word of mouth, et cetera. That's really our next step is to not be the best kept secret. We're pretty good. I mean, we have good visibility and so forth, but I'm talking about, water on demand becoming a household word, or rather a business word, a word of the business world, shall we say, right? That needs to happen, because then we can really start to take our ideas and share them. And we don't want to hold on to it all, right? We want like, hey, let's have a bunch of water companies doing this. Let's make it a big thing that is done a lot. One company doesn't change an industry, neither 20 companies don't, but 100 or 1,000 companies, that starts to make change. And so that's really where, by having a tremendous amount of visibility and documented wins, investors winning at making good, generational money from royalties, et cetera, then it starts to all kind of become like something people are excited about. And the word gets around, and then you become hopefully a household word in the business investing world. So that's our goal. In a way, we like to talk of ourselves as we're Tesla in 2004, which is when Elon Musk came in and dropped $30 million into a company that already existed. And then they built this like really crappy Lotus car with a bunch of computer batteries. And but they made one. They made one. And that's the key. Is another big lesson for me in business is make the first thing. Just don't let the great be the enemy of the good. Just get the darn thing out. That way you have a milestone. Boom, here it is. The project done, right? And so already we started raising money in September. Already we have revenues kicking in for the investors from water on demand. Now, it's not big revenue, but it's like, okay, we're rolling, we're doing something. And that I think is key.
And that sounds like a small win or hitting a milestone. And I know in anything that we do here, we always focus on building those small wins. So then at the end of the day, at the end of the year, we can see it and look back and be like, oh, we did so much. And it's just not all depending on that product. Do you feel similar about keeping track of milestones and just focusing on those small wins?
Well, first of all, it's a morale thing, right? So the team has to know that they got somewhere. And of course, the investors need to know that too. But there's no better milestone than a check in the bank, right? So the investor starts seeing, even if it's a few dollars, like, oh, wow, that was quick. Like, okay, and more and more and more. And that way they relax, like, okay, you know what? The trickle will become a stream. The stream will become a flood. It's all good, right? But if they have to wait with total drought, because it's going to be a big avalanche, they get more and more freaked out. So better to start a little bit early than do a lot later, in my opinion.
And just hear your feedback about what do you think about the episode, the conversations, and any topics you'd like to cover as well.
Well, it was really interesting, circling back to general sustainability. I mean, putting water in the general context of sustainability. And the problem with sustainability as a field, it's often not sustainable. In other words, during the height of the green thing, when I was in algae, I used to ask investors, so have you ever made money from a green investment? And they go, nope, I haven't. I'm like, well, what's the use of that? What's the use of sustainability if your investment doesn't have ROI, right? So sustainability isn't just, hey, we do good recycling or we have green energy or whatever. It's got to make financial sense, or else how is it sustainable, right? People miss that. And I think that that's been very bad for the whole green space. It's gotten a bad rep. And this is kind of why people have been reluctant to leave dirty industries, because at least that's reliable, right? It's like, hey, I got an oil well and it throws money at me, and I know that people are still driving cars, et cetera. Now, I think it's a terrible space for economic reasons because it's up and down constantly. You can't control it. When are they going to shut down a bunch of wells? You don't know. And when is an administration going to change its mind about a pipeline? This and that is so political. So it's not a great space, but I can see why people are in it, because it's big and it's been around forever. Water is big, it's been around forever, but it has not been available to the general investor. So So we plugged them in, and now we have a whole new source of energy, financial energy for the water industry. So our job, again, is to make it a sustainable investment so that people make money from their water investments. And if they do that, water is such a virtuous space, then we've got a combination of making good money and helping the world. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. Now, I have to say also, I'm a water guy. You were asking earlier about hobbies. I'm a big sailor, but I'm also a big skier. And both of them are in forms of water, right? So in a way, I really, really rely on water supply. And when there's droughts, it affects the skiing too, right? So I definitely am aware of the pace of climate change and what's going on. And you know what? It's a generational challenge. This climate change thing is something that if I can get OriginClear to a certain level where I get kicked upstairs because I'm not good enough to be a CEO, then I would like to work on some of these climate change challenges, because I think we have embedded problems that are very, very hard to change, a lot of vested interests. And I have, ideas of where to go with that. But, good things come from relatively small steps, right? Like having a city with rooftops that are all gardens, for example. That's a cool idea, right? You get, food and stuff like that, but you also get, tremendous amount of cooling effect and so forth. So, like that example of when they reintroduced wolves into Yellowstone, right? And there's that whole case study where it fixed everything, all of the erosion and the drought and the this and that, and just reintroducing some wolves. And so we need to think about these pressure points and how we can do something surgically, boom, and then it makes all this ecological change. That to me is really interesting, right? There was a saying by Socrates that I just posted on Facebook today. The secret of change is to focus all of your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new. Socrates. And I think that's a big deal when you think about it, right? So don't try and fight the old, because you'll be old yourself, right? And building the new is more fun too, right?
Most definitely. I know you even have a finite amount of energy, a finite amount of time. Focus on the past, you can't change it. You can only move forward to change the future. So coming towards the end of our episode today, do you have any advice for young individuals going into businesses, starting new businesses, and being entrepreneurs?
I would say apprenticeship is a big deal. Go somewhere where you can learn the ropes. I jumped into computing in New York in the 80s, and the first computer I sold, I literally did not know where the switch was, turn it on. Of course, by the time I sold it, I did. But the point I'm making is I had no apprenticeship. It's like, well, computer sounds great. And it created a whole lot of extra hard work and stress. So I think that you really want to go somewhere, and like, if you're going to go in finance, apprentice with somebody in finance. If you're going to go building rooftops, go with somebody who's building roofs. Do that. And I think that you'll then get that tremendous fluency that you need to then build on top of and be creative, because every profession has a whole bunch of layers of stuff that people already know. You don't want to relearn that stuff, right? And so by just getting that apprenticeship in place, now you can be really interesting to people who want to fund change.
Amazing. Sounds great. Well, thank you again, Mr. Eckelberry, for joining me today and discussing Clear Origin, sustainability, and technology.
Nelson, it's been such a pleasure. I wish you luck with your project. Sounds like you got a good thing going. And let's check in on each other in a few months and see how we're doing.
Sounds great. Sounds wonderful. And with that, we conclude another episode of Young Entrepreneurs with the Green Roof Team, today featuring Riggs Eckelberry of OriginClear. Special thanks to our sponsors for supporting us through all of our endeavors in the past and in the future. And remember, folks, stay sustainable.
Peace out. Thank you.